Okay, welcome back for another episode of Evolving Heights, the podcast. And this is a space where high performers come to really reconnect with who they really are and deepen their self awareness and understand the identity that really sits behind their results. I'm Ross, and today I'm really pleased to be joined by someone who has been making a real impact in the world of women's transformation, and that is Rachel Solway, founder of Level Up. Now, Rachel is a transformational coach who helps mainly women build deep confidence and reconnect with their power and really truly align with the identity of the woman that they're truly meant to become. And what I love about Rachel is her work blends a lot of the mindset, the emotional mastery, and embodiment and self worth in a way that feels both really quite grounded and expansive. And really, in today's conversation, we're going to dive really into more around identity, more than what we've ever done. So, this doesn't only apply to women, this cuts across the board, although we will concentrate on feminine leadership and self worth and some of those emotional blocks, and just really what it takes to transform from the inside out. So if you find yourself in a season of reinvention, rebuilding confidence, or just stepping into a new chapter, this episode is for you. So let's dive straight in. So, Rachel, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having
And
me.
no problem, it's our pleasure. And for anyone that's maybe just new to your world or not came across you before, can you maybe tell us a little bit about how Level Up, your company, began and perhaps what moment or experience made you realize that you were meant to guide women through identity and transformation?
Of course. So I'm going to take you right back when I was in college, which was about 11 years ago now. And I had just done a sports BTEC at college, done really well. And it came to the summer where I had to decide what am I going to do next. And
Mm,
part of me was like, I'm just going to go and get a full-time job and just earn some money. Just a bit of an admin job, see what's out there. And I told my college tutor, and he looked at me in the face and he went, No, you're not doing that. He was like, You have so much more potential, and I don't want to see you just leave to go and do a quote unquote dead end job. And I was like,
mm,
Right, okay. I have no idea what you mean, but sure, I'm going to listen to you because you've been my tutor. I respect what you're saying. So he advised me to stay on and do a personal training qualification, which I then did the following year. And after I did the qualification, I had just turned 20 years old, and there was a new gym that opened in Exeter, where I'm from. And I joined there as a member, and the manager came up to me and he was like, Just seeing that you've qualified, do you want to come and work for us? And I was like,
mm,
Sure, okay. No idea what I'm doing, but absolutely chuck myself in the deep end. And I remember literally a week later, I had, as I said, just turned 20 years old. I joined Snap Fitness and I was so excited and I had no idea what I was doing. Like,
mhm,
it was one of those moments where I thought, what decision have I just made? Why didn't I go and get that 9 to 5 job? And I was chucked in right at the deep end. And hand on heart, that was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me because without
mm,
that, I wouldn't be stood here today. So, fast forward, I spent about 18 months PTing in the gym. Bear in mind, at this point, I had no idea how to run a business, no idea how to run myself, wasn't looking after myself. I was still so young. Yeah, I was trying to
mm,
show other, at the time, men and women how to lose weight, how to get in shape, but I wasn't doing it myself. And on
mm,
reflection, I was so out of alignment with who I should have been and what I was doing. 18
mm,
months later, I left the industry because I just thought, I'm no good at this. I shouldn't be here.
mm,
What am I doing? And I did go and get the 9 to 5 job, and I was there for probably just over 12 months. And in that
mhm,
time, I was happy to have a bit of money behind me, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't satisfied with what I was doing. I was waking up every day knowing that I was going to deal with moaning customers on the phone talking about shoes, right? And I didn't want to do
mm,
that, but I stuck it out. And then it got to a point. August 2019, I thought I have had enough of this and made a decision that in the next 3 months, I was going to leave that job and I was going to go back to doing what I knew I was capable of doing, which is helping other women. Rejoin the industry in the November. Very long story short, I then got myself working at the gym group in Exeter, started to build up my business, and that is essentially how Level Up formed. All from my college tutor not letting me go and get a 9 to 5 job.
Love it. And we kind of need those people, don't they, that hold us to or have more belief in us than what we potentially do. And it's only in reflection that you can see the turning points and those that have had such an impact on our journey. And something that you were calling out there that I know many people in business, coaches, professionals, entrepreneurs, it's that whole idea of imposter syndrome, isn't it? And you've got qualifications or you're trying to lead someone to a result, but then you're feeling that you're not walking the walk at the same tone. And this it's a bit of a disconnect. And that's what maybe forced you into, okay, I'm going to seek a sense of comfort or security in that 9 to 5. But I
Yeah.
think from you, having started probably compared to many people at a very young age doing your own business, where you're thrown in the deep end, you really are when it comes to business, because you're running the show, you're relying, that's what's your livelihood, with you showing up in the world. And I think if you hadn't have had that, you wouldn't be having the success and the journey that you've been having up until now, definitely.
100%. Like, and it's like you said, you need someone else to see it in you because there is no way that Rachel at 18 years old, who was ready to go into the big wide world and get a 9 to 5 admin job, would have seen the potential that Rachel at almost 29 years old has right now.
Mm, cool. And so you're effectively having to upgrade your self-image, your identity, your belief system. And that's something I think we're always continually doing, in terms of where we find ourselves today for the version of you that you want or the results that you are seeking, there's going to be an upgrade in what you think is possible that's required. And I think this is one of the reasons why we were talking even just before we came on today, how I admired and used so much, speaking quite recently a lot more about that whole idea of identity, which many people are in business and coaches really starting to almost like beat that drum. And you speak a lot about becoming the woman you want to be. And
Mhm.
so I'm interested in your view, what actually shapes, and again, this could apply to men and women, but what shapes that identity? And why do so many men and women feel disconnected from who they truly are?
I think it's really evolved over the past sort of 5 to 10 years because if I take myself back to 18 years old and someone said to me, you need to think about your identity, I'd be going, what the hell are you on about? Like, I don't need to
Mm.
think about my identity. I need to worry about what weights I'm lifting in the gym. Whereas society has changed and people are starting to understand a little bit more that when you want to get a result, whether it's in the gym, in business, whatever area of your life, it has to start with the inner work first, not
Mm,
the outside world, the other things that you try to control.
mm,
So we we have to make sure that we really understand the reason behind why we need to do something, but also
mm,
why we're actually doing it for ourselves and who we need to become in order to achieve it. Far too many people try to put a plaster over a broken bone. They try to
mhm,
solve things, as I said, with outside tangible stuff that they hope will make a difference. But
mm,
the only way you will actually ever get the result is by controlling the one thing that you truly have control over, which is yourself. And as I
mm,
said, this has become or starting to become a bit more of a normal and maybe slightly more understood topic because
mhm,
I think we are, touch wood, coming to maybe near the end of the, if I talk from my space, like the health and fitness world, like the fad diets, the slimming clubs, the quick fixes essentially. And again, that can be applied to like any area of life. We
mhm,
we are starting to notice the downfalls in those, and people are starting to understand that there actually has to be deeper work done.
Totally. I think it's such a beautiful acknowledgement because I think that whole idea of putting a plaster on a broken bone. I mean, you probably dealt with many clients and that come to you that just think that the thing that will make me happy will be just losing that weight or getting into this
Mm.
position. And myself included, and you and probably went through many journeys in the physical world, if we just took that example, where you've got into a really good shape, but then you've not felt really much differently on the inside. Why is that? Because you're saying your identity is not caught up with you yet. You're still running the same narrative of who you are, what you're capable of, even though the outside result that we're all chasing, whether that's that job, that loving partner, you can get it all. And I almost like to think of it almost like a thermostat. You've got an emotional baseline. And unless you upgrade and change the temperature, it's almost like opening a window, the temperature drops, but it will regulate, it'll go back to its set point, so to speak. You kind of need to change that positioning first and foremost. Otherwise, this is why I think we only get temporary results. A lot of the time is because you revert back to that fit point, that you go back to that weight, you go back to being single if you're looking for the relationship. You still sabotage in a way because you don't believe in the even though you've got the physical result, you don't believe you're worthy of
The key word there that you said is belief,
it. Mm,
because as you said, it is the narrative that people tell themselves. So let's say you lose a stone, but you're constantly saying to yourself in your head, I'm going to put that weight back on, you will start to
mm,
act in accordance to how you believe. And
mhm,
that's not coming from a place of, you know, you should just stand in the mirror and say these things and hope that it works. It's a case of actually your your actions are dictated by what you believe. Your results are produced by your actions, and your belief is then changed by the results that you get. So it's this cycle, and I constantly talk to my clients about it. It's such a positive, powerful cycle to be in, but getting
mm,
into it is the hardest thing.
mhm, mhm,
Actually taking that first step, because a lot of people think the first step is believing in themselves, but actually I beg to differ that it's taking action, because you're only going to
mm,
start to believe in yourself when you prove to yourself that you can do something. So as I
mm,
said, we can stand in the mirror and we can say these things, which will help to some extent. But if that's not followed with action, then we're never gonna follow through, and we'll always believe the old narrative that we keep feeding to ourselves.
mhm, mhm. Totally. I do agree with what you're saying there because words in themselves, affirmations, so to speak, in the mirror, are quite empty if you can be a disconnect between what you think mentally but what you feel emotionally.
Yeah,
And it's the emotional part of you, the subconscious elements that really are dictating the show. That's where your belief system lies. It's at an emotional level. So
yeah.
you could be saying one thing but feeling another, and it's the feeling that really matters, and that is really determines the energy that's behind those actions. So belief absolutely key, and it's something that I think works in tandem, as you said, with I don't say action. I'm always about saying aligned action, which is a little bit different. Whereas I think when you actually know that you can change, you said a moment ago, the only thing you can control really is not the things out with you, it's within yourself. You can actually have the power to choose how you respond to something and change the emotional atmosphere. And when you can start to cultivate more control around that, then you're less influenced by outer circumstances and you can approach things with a different energy behind the actions. And that's one thing that I love to kind of explore a little bit more. But just teasing this out a little bit more in terms of this gap between who we are and who we become. What, when you talk about belief, what do you see as the biggest block that are stopping individuals from stepping into that next level version of themselves? Is it, when we're talking about fear, self doubt, old narratives, conditioning, what really stands out most?
The women that I work with, the biggest block is the self-sabotage. And
Mm,
that links into the other areas, which is the narratives they tell themselves, their upbringing, their environment, social
mhm,
media. the list goes on. There are so many things that cause us to self-sabotage. But having said that, I think for a lot of people, they don't actually realize or even know what self-sabotage is. So
Hmm.
it's almost become the norm to, let's say they have a bad day at work, to then go and order a takeaway with their partner to make themselves feel better. What
Mm.
they don't realize is that's an inner problem that they are not dealing with that has come from previous experiences, previous feelings of self-doubt, stories they tell
Hmm.
themselves, like so many things. And again, it comes back to that plaster over a broken bone because it's like instead of dealing with the issue, which is the emotional reaction to a situation, they just cover it
Hmm.
up with something temporarily that's going to make them feel better in the moment.
Mm. So what you're saying is, just like anything, it's that self-sabotage is a pattern
Yeah.
that you're seeing that they are. It's probably something that they think they've maybe worked on, but they're not realizing what's driving that behavior, that cycle. And I think, I always I was saying last night on a call to clients how we have some patterns and habits in our life that serve us really well. Like brushing your teeth is a good pattern or habit that I don't, I hope to think that everyone does that you've acquired over the course of your lifetime. But there are certain things that are bespoke to each and every single one of us. Like you might be in the habit of having a particular drink, or because some people might think it's the habit or cultural accepted to have a drink on a Friday night, or that you may associate there'll be an emotional trigger that is driving your behavior. And I'm always keen to say that there's no point trying to change anything until you one identify what you want and also what is driving where you're at, because you can't really bridge a gap otherwise unless you're aware of what's running the show just now. So I love that whole idea of that self sabotage. We know what to do, but we just don't do it. So it's understanding why are we in that pattern? Why are we in that cycle?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's so easy to, again, fall back into the temporary fixes, the plaster over the broken bone, for example, in the health and fitness world, like thinking you need a really boring meal plan because that made you lose a stone in 4 weeks before, instead of
Mm,
actually dealing with the real problem, which is the fact you don't even know yourself. You don't even
mm,
know who you are, how to act, what causes you to react in a certain way, what triggers you. And it's something that a lot of people just don't even think about. And when they do think about it, they think, oh, it's not for me. Don't worry about it. But it shows up in
mm,
every single area of your life. So if you're working
mhm,
on your health and fitness right now, the same triggers will affect your business and it will affect
mhm,
your relationship and it will affect everything. So this is why you're again coming back to health and fitness. This is why it's like arguably the most important thing that you work on because also it's not what you do in the gym, it's what you do to change you. And that's
mhm, mhm.
that's the only thing you ever have control over, and it's the most important thing you could do.
Totally. You're the only constant, effectively, in all those
Yeah.
areas of your life. Some people think that they've got a version of them that shows up in their work, in their professional life, versus in their relationships or their home life or in their physical life. It's all different. It's all independent in its own individual box, so to speak. But as you said, it's all integrated because it's you at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just thinking there around embodiment and mindset. These sort of words get flung about quite a lot. They're quite popular in the coaching world nowadays,
Mm,
and alignment as well. And a lot of people think about, oh, I just need to focus on mindset. But it really goes a lot deeper into embodiment. And you said a lot of people, we don't really know ourselves because we are running on familiar patterns. You're in maybe a job, a 9 to 5. You've got maybe a lot of busy lifestyles. You're comparing yourself with what you're seeing on social media.
mm,
I don't think there's much breathing space in a day for people to actually self-analyze or even want to do that. Why would you want to do that? It's a bit scary when you start to shine a light over all the things that you know that you shouldn't be doing. But can you maybe explain to me for what you think is the difference between when we think about embodiment? What's the difference between thinking like the future version of the self that you're aspiring to have, the version maybe not just in fitness, but even in relationships, in your career. What is the difference between thinking like that future version and maybe living and embodying that future self?
I think we convince ourselves that it's further away than it actually is. And we tell ourselves that we have 101 things to do before we get there, when actually all that does is just delay it. And I'm not saying that you will wake up tomorrow and suddenly feel like the person you want to be and suddenly start acting like them, but it has to start somewhere. So
Hmm.
if you are even thinking about it, just one of those thoughts needs to be turned into an action. I'm I'm such a big advocate for taking action regardless, like taking action no matter how you feel, taking action no matter what's going on in your life, etc. So the longer we think about something, the more we just delay actually achieving it. So I actually don't think there's too much of a gap, other than, again, coming back to the story we tell ourselves. I think for a lot of people, they believe that narrative that they are not where they want to be, and they keep believing it enough to convince themselves that they'll never get there. So there's no point taking action to get there, which then
Mm,
makes the gap so much bigger. Whereas on the flip side, if you've got the thought that you want to be that person, you want to live like that person, that thought should be enough to start doing just one small thing. Because the person you want
mm,
to be, she didn't just wake up one day and arrive at that location. She has put in hours and hours and days and weeks and months to get there, but she only got there because she started.
mhm, mhm. So it's almost that idea of not waiting until you feel ready, not waiting or
Yeah.
think that there's a perfect time. It's almost like having to bypass your logical, rational mind that is effectively doesn't really care about your desires or goals at all. It
Yeah.
just really wants to keep you in a safe of known and familiarity, which is
Mhm.
safety in your mind, even though if that safety is, I don't like this safety zone anymore, it doesn't serve me this lifestyle. So
Yeah.
you're saying effectively to act before you allow that narrative to take over and give you all the reasons, which are possibly very valid, as to why now is not the right time.
Yeah, exactly that. And also, for a lot of people, the place they want to get to is sometimes a reflection of someone else in a similar position. So they're
Mm,
inspired by someone else. For a lot of those people, they use that as a comparison thing. I'm not where they are, so what's the point? Whereas it should be flipped to know that if someone else can do it, why can't you do it? If someone else has got there, that's evidence, because our stories, our beliefs, the way we see the world is all made up in our own head. What you are looking at, like a color to you, is a different color to me, right? To some extent. So
mm,
if that is the truth, which it is, if beliefs are just simply stories, then
mm,
if we tell ourselves a different story, we will act in accordance with it. Therefore, if someone else has
totally.
achieved it, you can achieve it.
Totally. I love that. So there's a few strands there. So I think you've spoke about this quite recently about how you can start to use envy and comparison in a positive way
Yeah.
previously. I've noticed that quite, and you're absolutely right. So much of myself and my journey and others, we fall into that trap of comparison to think not as inspirational, but oh, we feel that weight of heaviness, like they've got it all together and I don't. But I think beautifully, as you said there, it's maybe saying that it's possible. And the only thing that differentiates, I mean, we're all living on this on this planet. We're all experiencing life, but yet we're all having we're living it, but we're having a very different experience of it. And it's really got nothing to do with what's going on outside of us. And one thing that I always say is that imagine me and you are sitting down to watch a movie and you actually love the movie, you think it's the best thing you've ever seen, where I'm sitting there thinking, nah, I didn't really enjoy that. Wasn't my flavour. Now the movie is what the movie is. You know, it's the same actors. We're listening to the same soundtrack, the same images. It's exactly the same. But what dictates our experience of it is nothing outside of us. It's an inner game again. And as you said, it's the narrative. So if you want to change your experience of it, you need to change the lens in which you look at it, as you're saying. Let's change the storyline. And when it comes to embodiment of your desires, I think it can. You said it starts with even the micro changes, and I think it's very true. You need to connect with the version of you that's already got it. Actually, start to think about what would that scenario feel like? What would I see? Where would I be? How would I hold myself? What sort of things would I say to myself? And when you can start to connect with that on a more deeper emotional level, not just mentally, that's when I think it starts to move into embodiment. And that's where I think you can start to take action from it with a different energy behind it. Even though I completely agree, you still won't be 100% ready. However, you start to change the mood music, so to speak, in a different way.
Yeah, exactly that. For example, if you want to feel confident, if you want to absolutely own the room when you walk into the room, you're not going to do that if you've rolled out of bed 20 minutes before, shoved your hair
Mm,
up, not put any makeup on. You know, I know that's quite a polarizing statement to say, but it's true because you're not going to feel great in yourself. So,
mm,
if you want to feel confident, you do the things that the confident version of you would do. She would get up earlier and take pride in her appearance. She would be on time. She would avoid scrolling on social media before an important meeting. You know, there's so many different things that, as
mm.
an example, a confident person would do. So you have the opportunity to act like the person that you want to be right now. The reason why I think people don't is because it's easier to not do it.
Totally. I mean, I put my makeup on and everything, especially before you come on this call, but
I thought so. I thought your brows were looking good today.
just touching into, so we're kind of almost focusing really on females and that feminine energy and integration. So on that note, I mean, your work, integrates a lot of feminine energy, maybe a emotional softness, strength, intuition. How do you specifically help women lead from their feminine without feeling like they're losing power or control?
I think, again, a lot of it comes down to the conversations in their head. So when someone starts to work with me, a lot of the conversations we have are, I don't know if I can do this. Am I doing this right? Should I be doing that? Which are normal questions to have, right, at the start of a journey, but at the same time,
Mm,
they just reflect the conversation that's going on in their head. A few months down the line, the conversations aren't like that. The conversations are, I have done this today, I have done that, this is what I think, because they found the power and the confidence in themselves by building their own self-trust. You build your own trust when you keep the promises that you make. And ultimately, the biggest promise that someone has is to do what they said they would do and
mm,
finally become the person they want to be. Like that's the promise that we should all be keeping to ourselves. And it looks different for everyone. It doesn't have to just be health and fitness related, but we all want to live up to our full potential, whether people want to admit it or not. If you're playing it safe in life, if you haven't got what you want, if you're cutting corners, you know that that is not you. You know that you are not
mm,
confident then. You know you're not feeling powerful. You are just scraping the barrel. So if we know that, then we should just commit to start taking action to get to there. We should make that first step. And I actually know that there's no shortcut, there's no beating around the bush with it. It is as simple as if you want to become this person, you have to do the work to get there.
mm. And I think what you're saying that it does, when you start breaking trust in yourself by saying you're going to do something and you don't follow through, then that almost like chips away ever so subtly and gradually over time in your belief in your own ability. Do you even trust yourself to follow through? And that in itself becomes an inner narrative or a cycle and a pattern.
Hmm. Yeah.
Mm,
And the a lot of people expect trust to come from other people. When you
Mhm.
get in a relationship with someone, if the trust is broken, it's done, right? And if they
Mhm.
do something, they haven't kept a promise to you, you lose the trust, the relationship's over.
Mhm.
Effectively, the same thing is happening on a daily basis for yourself.
Mhm. Mhm.
You say you're going to do something, and it can be just like simple stuff, i.e., you said you were going to reply to someone's message, but you didn't do it. You said you were going to take the bins out, but you didn't do it.
Mhm.
Like really, really small things. If you're
Mhm.
not becoming a person of your word, you will have no
Mhm.
self-trust.
Totally. It's a very big one, and I think I've even in my own journey came across people that I work with in business and things, and they say they'll do a certain thing, and probably because me, when I vocalize something, I don't know, it's a very like, strong value where I've said I won't let that person down. I'll go and follow through.
Yeah.
And when somebody says something to me and they don't do it, and they think, well, that happened, and I'm not saying I'm not flexible, but it's the lack of communication sometimes there. But I
Mm.
genuinely find a lot of people that don't have a lot of self trust, they end up attracting similar individuals or people or behavior around them that mirrors a lot of their own behaviors.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because, and you'll know this from knowing me, but if we talk about the relationship example,
Mm,
I attracted some not ideal people into my life in terms of relationships over, the past few years, besides Dom that obviously I'm with
mm,
now. But the only reason, and I believe this, the only reason why me and Dom have now got together is because I've changed who I am. It's not because
mm,
the people that were coming towards me were bad people, even, arguably we could say they are, but it's because I wasn't keeping my promises to myself. I wasn't that person. So, like, I had to take ownership of that. Hence why now I'm
mm,
in an amazing relationship, you know? And
yeah.
again, we're like I say women, but I'm sure men are quick to do it as well. We blame everyone else. We put pass responsibility. We won't take ownership. But actually, your life and you will only change when you take ownership and
Mm,
responsibility for what
mm,
you are doing or not doing. If you're constantly
mhm,
breaking your trust, no one else is going to trust you.
mhm, mhm. So true. And I think relationships, business, fitness, I think it's almost like we expect the mirror to smile first.
Yes.
The reflection can't change unless you change. And it's always been that way. This is really the crux, I believe, of identity and self image work. It's realizing that life is far more intrinsic than what meets the eye. We seem to think that we don't have any control over other people. And you don't, but by default, if you work on yourself and your own inner identity, your own inner assumption, belief system, you cannot help but reflect another image. And
Mhm.
that comes in the guise of other people and how they behave towards you, the circumstances that you and opportunities that you attract into your life because it's energy, it's vibrational. And as you said, it's just about changing that inner narrative, that inner belief, which, again, you said it yourself, it's not a truth. Because if they were truths, they'd be called truths, but they're not. They're called beliefs. And we
Mhm.
can change them exactly in the same way as we acquire them.
Yeah.
So, thinking of like practical transformation, and I think you were touching on things about being accountable to all those wee micro commitments and following through with what you said you would do, which I know was a famous quote of our quotes that we both formerly been in a
Yeah.
relationship with as well. If an individual man, woman was listening back, well, just now feeling a bit stuck, and they know, for example, they're meant for more, what is the first thing he or she can take, today to really shift into that alignment? If it was even just something small, doable, something powerful.
When someone says they know they are capable of more, a lot of the time they don't actually know what that is and they don't know what they want. So the biggest thing and the best thing that they could go and do today is leave their phone at home, grab a notepad and a pen, go out for a walk, go to a coffee shop, go to somewhere where you can just think and breathe
Mm,
and just write. Like there's no script, there's no questions you need to answer, but just get out of your head. We live in our heads way too much. And that's obviously where the beliefs come from and the narratives. So just write it all down because when you can write it down and make sense of it, you can then really focus on, okay, what is a story that I'm telling myself? Where am I self-sabotaging myself? What do I actually want? And what do I need to do to
Mm.
get there? But we all want more, right? What is more? More money, bigger glutes, a better relationship. We
Mhm.
all want something else, but we don't actually ever know what that other thing is and why we want it. So you have to get clear on it.
Totally. I love that. And you're just echoing exactly what I was saying last night on a call with clients because so many of them were coming up to me and saying exactly the same thing that they're trying to work out A to B effectively, the how, without even knowing what the end destination in the sat nav is, like point Z. And like, there's no point in trying to work out the next step if you don't even know where the end destination is. And I always go back to what would you love? And so many of us have never really posed that question. Another person was even talking about last night how they put other people's opinions or their desires over their own. And I'm saying that's just a habit again. You've never probably taken the time out to ask yourself, what would you love? And I shared with them a simple exercise similar to what you said is like, remove the distractions because it's your focus and your attention that is being pulled in all directions by your phone, by everything that's going on around in your life. You need to almost like carve out time to really allow those answers to rise to the surface. Because the part of you mentally that is, seeking comfort is not the part of you, as you said, that is seeking those bigger glutes or that growth. It's that's your soul, effectively. The part of you that is always seeking further growth and expansion. It's just kind of using you as like a 3D physical body to experience life. You just need to try and allow those answers to come to the surface. So pen and paper, absolutely love it. And I'm quite one of them, maybe doing it quite holistically. I think of magic wand style, or like even just having a little me in the middle and saying, okay, how would I want my health to look like? In terms of my mental, my physical, my spiritual. How would I love my relationships to look like? In terms of my family, my partner, my friends, and then getting into the nitty gritty about what does that look like every day? How am I spending my time? Allow your imagination to do what it was intended and bring those answers. But I do believe, and it always comes back to, I think so many people don't pose that question because they have not achieved things that they would love before, or they look to the right and the left of them, and they don't see other people going for those goals, so they don't think it's attainable. We already go into how mode. We think that we should have all the answers up front and center. And if we don't, then that stops us from going for what we truly love and we start going for lukewarm desires and because that seems more attainable. But I think you're right. Start to just get that out of your system is key.
The how mode that you said there is so important because that's why
Mm,
we exist, right? The how, that comes down to the coaches, that comes down to the leaders in your life, that comes down to those that have been there. You don't
mm,
have to worry about the how. And when you do worry about the how, you play small.
mm,
You don't allow yourself to think. You don't allow yourself to be creative. And you also don't allow yourself to actually say what you really want. When I get on sales calls with ladies wanting to come on board, and I ask them, what do you want to achieve in 6 months? A lot of the time it's like, oh, I'll lose half a stone. I'm like, no, what do you actually want to achieve in 6 months? Half a year? Like, stop letting this internal narrative that has controlled your life for however long keep you in this
mm,
box. Stop letting the fear of what someone else around you is going to think. Stop letting all of these external things that you have no control over control what you really want.
mm-hmm. No, I love it. I love it. In terms of your own evolution, what's one identity shift that you've had to make, even just reflecting on this year, in terms of your own life or in business? Where do you stand just now?
If we'd done this podcast at the start of this year, I actually don't think I would have given anywhere near the answers that I've given.
Mm,
And I think I would have probably stood here and said, it's all about being hardcore, lift as heavy as you can in the gym and just it's
mhm,
all about action, right? And I know I have said you have to take action, but I have really realized in the past 12 months that everything always starts with you, no
mhm,
matter if it is an external thing that you can't control, you still have control over it. And there's been, changes in my life, changes personally. Like I've moved in with Dom. That's a big shift, right? Because you can't just go and do what you want as such when you want. And, there's so many adjustments you have to make. And business has changed and there's been lots of adjustments. And I've changed. Like,
mm,
I know I'm not the same person. There is no way that I would be sharing the stuff that I'm sharing on social media now because I am starting to be a bit more polarizing and sharing what I think. So I
mm,
actually think the biggest shift has been me, like just everything that I talk about, everything I believe, everything that I do. I would not be saying any of this stuff had we spoke in January 2025 for a fact.
mm. And I think that's the beauty of, everything in terms of who you are in life. That I always think you should approach things with almost a white belt mentality. Like, if you think that you know it all, then there would be no point in you being here. You may as well
Yeah.
cop out. It's like, okay, I've reached that level now. I can go on now. It's the journey of understanding. There's more depth to you, who you are, life, your goals,
Mm.
and you evolve. What you believe to be true and what you're saying just now. Again, I believe it'll take another hue, another colour, and another 6 to 12 months. You'll be able to add more depth to it through your experiences, through your exposure. And I think that's part of the beauty of just being around um, other like-minded individuals that are seeking growth and not being just left in your own head, as you said.
Yeah. I used to be driven so much by external success, like
Mm,
more clients, more results, more money, all of those things, right? And I'm not saying that they're not important to me because they are, but when I was driven by those things, I got so caught up in chasing the external that I forgot about the most important thing, which is the internal. And another coach said on a video that I watched a couple of months ago that life is just a self-discovery and self-improvement journey. And it really
mm,
sat with me because I was like, hang on a minute. I'm trying to get to a point that I'm actually never going to get to because the goalpost always moves. And this is
mm,
something that I always say to my clients. And I delivered a talk on this at our client event a couple of weeks ago. And I summarized it with we're all chasing this deadline, but the only deadline, as morbid as it is to say, is the day we die. And
mm,
so we're constantly searching for more and thinking that's going to make us happy. But actually, the happiness starts with right now. Because if you always want more, you're never going to be happy. And that was such a big lesson that I had to learn. And as I said, I've really only discovered that in the past year or two.
mm. I think what you're really what I've kind of taken from that is that when you think about external things that you're chasing, whether it's, more clients, more money, or a partner, what are you really wanting there? Well, you're not really wanting the thing as much as you do. It's more what that brings to you internal with a feeling. You want the partner because you want to feel loved and cared for and appreciated and worthy. You want the money so that you can feel secure financially and independent and having the ability to do the things and the freedom. You want that sense of freedom and autonomy. You want to have clients so that you can feel a sense of purpose and add value. It's all these internal emotions that you are seeking. That's really what's driving the external result or your behavior and your actions towards having that thing. But when you're able to cultivate because it works the opposite way too, by the way. It's kind of like I was saying that we're trying to change the mirror, the reflection, without changing the inner. Whereas when you realize that you can cultivate the emotional state of already having the thing to begin with, that's what you can. But this is where I talked about and agree with you entirely. Action. But if you can start to get in tune and in harmony with the version of you that's already got it by using your imagination, by impressing upon your subconscious that emotional state, then you've already got it. And then that's the beauty because that's when you're able to take aligned action and actually bridge the gap. It's almost like I always talk about, like thinking of a radio or a the radio signal. There's all these frequencies that are beaming into your house right now, and you could tune into any of them. They're all playing different songs. They're all there, and you're kind of like listening to one channel on repeat, getting you the same level of results in your health, in your fitness, in your business, and your relationships. You're listening to that tune, but there's other ultimate tunes playing at the same time. They're not waiting for you to change the dial before it starts playing. They're already playing. And so I kind of use that analogy to compare it to your emotional state, where you're dwelling upon. What you think about really dictates what you're feeling. So if you're feeling and thinking about not having, not being worthy, then guess what song you're playing on repeat? And you can't expect to hear a different tune by just wanting it. You need to change the inner dial, so to speak. And I think life, as you said again, is just this game of unlimited levels. And you're really the beauty of it is just to see how far up the levels can you go in the time that you've got, which is really unbeknown to any of us. So that's how I kind of like to look at it. I think like when I was younger playing Mario Kart and Bowser at the end, and you needed to play the levels over and over again and repeat. So many of us are playing a level over and over and repeat in certain areas of our life, and we're not getting past that that mental barrier.
Yeah, I love that. And that radio thing, I'm definitely going to steal because that, I think, going back to what we've said earlier, for a lot of us, we don't know what we want because we've never given ourselves space to actually think about what we want.
Mm,
But the reason we also haven't given ourselves space is because of the story that keeps coming back. And it's like you said, whichever channel you're in tune with is what you're going to believe. So you have to have the space available. And it is literally as simple as taking yourself for a 10-minute walk. Like,
mm,
it's not a big thing that you have to do, and you don't have to reinvent your whole life in one go. You just have to give yourself permission to think without the kids crying, without work annoying you, without thinking about how much you're going to squat in the gym. Like, you just need a bit
mm.
of space to go and breathe. This is what I want.
So for anyone listening right now who feels something inside them, or if it's a female that's awakening but she doesn't know how to access it, what would you say to them?
Stop believing the story you've always told yourself and just start going for a walk. No distraction. Don't try and write a list of 101 different things to do. Don't worry about what your friends are doing or what they're going to think. Don't worry about how you're going to get there. Just go and breathe for a second and slow down. And for the love of God, leave your phone at home because social media is ruining so many people's lives. And it is more than likely the reason why you are not doing something as simple as going for a walk and breathing right now.
To breathe.
Breathe. Just
Yeah.
take a deep breath.
Great. Yeah. Rachel, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming along and being here with us today. Your insights around just identity, embodiment, feminine transformation, really incredible. So you've just reminded us that becoming your next level self isn't always about just forcing change, but it's about remembering who you truly are and really just releasing what's in the way and choosing a new identity from a place of worthiness. So for anyone who wants to connect with Rachel or explore Level Up, I will drop the links below. I just want to again thank you for tuning in for another episode of Evolving Heights. Until next time, just keep evolving, keep aligning, and remember that your identity creates your reality. So, see you in the next episode.